Alright, it's Henry again, and this is my review of the 1/60th scale HY2M Hyper Hybrid Model Gloria Series Gouf. Okay, now I know I don't usually do reviews much anymore these days, but this is such a rare model kit that you don't see very often that I decided I should probably go ahead and do a review of it just because there's not very many reviews out there. And I feel like people should probably be informed before they decide to go out and pay a lot of money for one of these kits. So, this is 1/60th scale, so it's the same size as a perfect grade, but it is not a perfect grade. Basically, in the early 2000s, Bandai was making the perfect grades, and they made RX-78 and the Green Zaku and Char Zaku, and instead of making a perfect grade Gouf or a perfect grade Dom, they decided, hey, we've got this HY2M model kit series, which is not really, it's not exclusively 1/60th scale kits. It's actually a bunch of different stuff. They make master grade heads with light up eyes. They made like a 1/12th scale Gundam beam saber with like lights and sounds. They made 1/60th scale Gouf and Dom, and I think they made a 1/12th scale RX-78 and a 1/24th scale RX-78. So just all over the place with this HY2M. But I decided instead of making a perfect grade Gouf or Dom, let's put them in the HY2M line. And pretty much these were made to not really, I don't know, they look very, very similar to what you would imagine a perfect grade Gouf would look like. Like if Bandai had actually made a perfect grade Gouf back in the early 2000s, I imagine this is exactly what it would look like. The only difference is that with HY2M, they did not emphasize the inner frame. I'll show off the inner frame later in this video, but instead of a really complex mechanically detailed inner frame, they decided to put in a bunch of LED lights. Now this kit has 9 LEDs in it and uses light piping to distribute some of that light in several, I think 15 different points. But you'll see those over the course of this video, and basically that's the point of these 1/60 scale HY2M kits. So right out of the box you are obviously going to get a Gouf. You will have a couple of leftover parts, so don't be alarmed. You'll have some leftover joint parts here. You're not forgetting anything. Those are actually supposed to be leftover, as well as some leftover energy cable parts. Let's see, you get a instruction manual, a very, very plain black and white instruction manual. Very thick though. It's I think I said 46 pages when I did the unboxing video. Yeah, 46 pages of just black and white instructions, plus this little page is like some sort of addendum for cutting off the LED contacts in the legs. But anyway, so yeah, definitely want to pay very, very, very close attention to that, because the electronics in this kit are pretty complex. A lot more complex than what you would see in a perfect grade. I'll get into that later. You do get a sheet of clear stickers, which oddly enough, none of these are pre-cut. Not a single one of them. Now I've seen stickers from Bandai that aren't pre-cut before, but never the entire sheet, which is, I mean, kind of a shame, because they're really good looking caution markings, but not a single one of them is cut. So you're going to have to take your hobby knife and cut each one of these out in order to put it on the kit. I won't be using these because I don't like stickers. I'd rather use water slide decals. Also, some of these, like these black stickers up here and this orange sticker, or what used to be an orange sticker up here at the top, are actually functional. They're for using with the LEDs and the nuts and bolts inside the kit. It's not a lot, but you'll see it when you get inside. It's not like interesting or creative or anything. It's just to hold things in place. You will get a Gouf shield. Nice detail on the back side. Let's see, you will get a heat saber, get a clear blade, And you'll get two different versions. You'll get one heat saber that is meant to be stored on the back of the shield, and then you'll get another heat saber. You'll notice it's got a hole in the handle. That hole is going to accommodate a screw to screw into the hand. Don't know why they couldn't have used a peg, because, I mean, it's just a little sword. It's not very heavy. I feel like a peg would have supported it in the hand pretty easily, but for whatever reason they decided to use a screw. Let's see, you will get the heat rod. And if you've ever built the Master Grade Gouf 2.0, this is exactly like the heat rod on that kit. Each little segment here is individually ball jointed, so, and as you can see, they come off, so really you could shorten it to any length you want, but endless flexibility with this thing. So, and it's all made of styrene plastic. It's not like the rubbery polycat material like it was on the Master Grade 2.0. Let's see, you almost forgot, here's the mount to connect the shield to the forearm. That's got a screw in it, actually a bolt, but lots of screws and bolts in this kit. And you get two different options for the forearm. This is the fixed pose option. It's got LED lights inside the fingers for the machine gun finger thing. And then you get a second forearm. You don't get the armor, you just get like the inner frame part, but you get a posable hand. And this one's just like on the Master Grade Gouf 2.0, where each finger is individually posable, and it's got, I think, ABS joints in there, so it should be nice and sturdy, and it looks pretty darn good as well. So, posable Gouf hand. You are going to get a small runner of these little clip things, and obviously I haven't cut any of them out or used them, but these are meant to go in between the segments of the heat rod here to give it a little bit more strength. Like if you wanted to pose it out like this, it's really kind of too heavy to support its own weight, but these are meant to solve that issue and let it stand up a little bit better. Let's see, you are going to get two little hex wrenches. These are for assembly. You got two different size bolts that are going to be used in this kit. The kit does not come with a screwdriver, so you will need a small Phillips head screwdriver. You get a second command antenna. We have two different options. This is the smooth, anime accurate version, and then you've got the more real type looking antenna, as you can see there. And one last thing is that you get a mount for the back skirt. Now, unless you own the HY2M DOM, this is going to be completely useless to you. This is going to connect to the back skirt like so, and just allows you to use the DOM's bazooka to connect to the back skirt. So if you don't have the DOM, this is going to be pretty much useless to you. So that is all the stuff you get in the kit. This kit does not include any batteries, and I actually had a little bit of trouble finding out which type of batteries I needed for the main light here. It tells you clearly in the manual that for the forearm, this uses a separate battery. You're going to need a CR1216. So get yourself one of those. They're not very expensive, probably cost you about 50 cents if you get it off Amazon or eBay. That's going to go in the forearm. You got two batteries inside the torso. Unfortunately, it didn't really say in the manual what kind of batteries you needed, other than that they were 1.5 volt batteries. It probably does, but it's all in Japanese, and I couldn't discern any of the katakana or figure it out. But I eventually whittled it down to N batteries. So get yourself some N cell batteries. They're about the same diameter as a AA or AAA battery. They're actually about halfway between AA and AAA, but they're only about half as long, so that's what you're going to need. And I got these at Walmart. They were like $2, so they're, once you figure out what kind of batteries you need, they're not very hard to find and they're not very expensive. So let me clean up all this stuff I've got over here and start with articulation. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and start out by saying that this is the tightest Bandai kit I've ever built. The joints are very, very tight. and even getting the armor on and off is very, very tight. I don't usually cut pegs when I do pre-assembly, but I actually had to cut the pegs like at a funny angle to be able to remove the armor easily. So I had to do that. Luckily though, almost every joint in this kit is supported by nuts and bolts, and they give you these little hex wrenches to adjust those nuts and bolts. So really the kit can be as loose or as tight as you want it to be. All you have to do is adjust those little bolts in there. So the head is not on a ball joint, it's on a swivel and a peg. It can go up a little bit, not very much, and it can rotate about that far to each side. The mono eye does move. You're gonna have to take the top of the head off. And you've got a little button right here. And the way they actually suggest you do it in the manual is there's a little tab on the end of the heat saber, and you'll put that in there, and that's going to let you rotate the mono eye back and forth. Oops. Of course, obviously you could do this with a small flathead screwdriver as well. So for torso movement, there is a ball joint in the torso, so you got some back and forward and a little bit of side-to-side rocking motion. Not a whole lot of rotation due to the shape of the skirt armor and because of these energy cables here. The cockpit hatch does open pretty easy. Just flip it open like so, and you can see a tiny rumble roll inside the cockpit there. Luckily it's got a clear part for the orange, so that's nice. For the arms, the shoulder is a ball joint, so it's going to have some forward and back movement, some up and down, rotates 360. Arm comes out about like so pretty much about 90 degrees. You got 360 below the shoulder. The shoulder armor is actually on a like a hinge right there, and then that's just pegged into the shoulder joint. You got a double jointed elbow, so it doesn't go a full 180, it's actually just slightly more than 90, but it is double jointed, so I think, well, no, there we go. So yeah, a lot more than 90. Still not 180, but pretty darn good for an early 2000s model kit. Yeah, sometimes you just gotta work with these joints because they're really tight. All these energy cables, by the way, I forgot to mention, are exactly like the heat rod. They are all individually ball jointed segments, so there's no cable running through the inside of these. These are all just little ball joints connected together. Let's see, the side skirts can come out. They don't swing or rotate or anything, they just go up and down. They're bolted in place actually. The front skirts, this part can move, similar to the Master Grade 2.0, goes out about that far. That's about it. Back skirt doesn't move at all. I forgot to go over the hands. This hand with the lights in it can rotate 360. It's actually not connected directly to the LED, so you can spin that around as much as you want, no problem. And the right hand is basically the same as a perfect grade. The fingers are not pre-assembled like they are in a perfect grade. You have to assemble each individual finger joint, but they have the same articulation. Each finger is on a ball joint, and then each finger has its individual joint in it. Wrist is on a ball joint, actually a pretty darn good wrist. Got bolts in there for supporting weight of any weapons you might want to hold. My only complaint about this hand is that it doesn't form a fist very well. Namely, the joint, like the actual ball joint that connects the finger to the palm of the hand, doesn't come forward very far. It only comes forward about like that. So the thumb works fine, but the fingers don't come forward. So really, like, this is about the best fist you can make with this kit. So that was kind of a disappointment. Anyway, onto the legs. The hips are ball jointed. They can come forward as far as the skirt armor will let them. They can actually go out quite a ways. You can pretty much do a full split with this guy. The hips have that swing thing where, like, they can come up a little bit, and then, you know, you could move that down. So it's not like it doesn't rotate this away. It rotates this away. So, like, the legs can do that thing. Anyway, being a ball joint, there is a little bit of rotation there, but not 360. The knees are extraordinarily tight. These are one of the, probably the only joint in the kit that is supported by nuts and bolts, but loosening the bolts doesn't do anything because the knee joint is just plain tight. It's a double jointed knee. You're going to get about 90 degrees out of it, though. And yeah, that's about all it's going to go. Very, very tight knee joint. The ankles, the foot doesn't have a joint in the middle of it because it's got LEDs in there, but the ankles are pretty good. It goes forward like that, down like that. You can see some of the wires down in there, maybe. Side to side. A little bit of rotation, not a whole lot, just because of the design of the armor. So yeah, I think that just about covers articulation. Oh, I guess I ought to talk about the articulated left hand real quick. Basically, exactly the same as the right hand, only these fingers only have one joint in the middle instead of two because, you know, machine gun hands. So each individually ball jointed. And these fingers actually have like a black inner frame. As you can see, the ball joints are black, and then you just slide these blue tube segments on top. So I actually like this one better than the light up hand just because it looks a lot more natural and it looks a lot cooler, even though it doesn't light up. And switching that arm out actually isn't terribly difficult. You basically just got to remove the armor, take that part off, take that part off. Let me get something to help here. And then you're going to take your little hex wrench. There's a bolt right there. Give that a few turns. That nut's going to come out. Poke this through. Pop that bolt out. And then the whole arm just slides right off very, very easily. Then you can slide this one on, put the bolt back in, put the nut back in the other side, tighten that up, and then simply put all the armor parts back on. Just like that. And now you've got the articulated hand on there. So, that does it for articulation. Now on to weapons and accessories. Alright, first weapon is the Heat Saber. It's got a nice clear orange blade. Like I mentioned earlier, we get two different handles for it. One has a hole in the handle, the other does not. This one is basically just for decoration. It will hold the blade, as you can see, but he can't really hold it in his hand. This one is basically just meant to be stored on the bottom of the shield. This one, with the hole in the handle, is going to accommodate a small bolt that'll go through there and allow him to hold the Heat Saber. Unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, I wasn't very impressed with the articulation in this hand. That same inability to make a fist also translates into an inability to hold the sword. Pretty much doesn't matter how tightly you wrap the fingers around it, he is not going to hold that thing. Don't know if Bandai saw that and was too lazy to redesign the fingers and just said, hey, let's just put a bolt in the handle, or what the deal was, but at least they provided us this. I still think a peg would have been a lot easier and probably would have gotten the job done just as well, but whatever. At least you know, with this thing bolted into his hand, he will never, ever, 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 ever drop this sword. So yeah, now it's bolted in and he's not going to lose that, ever. Next accessory is the heat rod. Pretty simple, just a whole bunch of little ball jointed segments together, a little bit wider on one end. And he's got the very first segment that's like permanently attached inside this little thingamabob on his forearm. That's bolted into place as well. And then you just pop that guy in, and that's about the size of it. He's now got a heat rod that he can flail around. You can wrap it around the Perfect Grade RX-78, or if you wanted to do a more Build Fighters theme, you could have him attacking Perfect Grade Astray, I don't know. And like I said earlier, they do give you these little guys, and pretty much the idea is you've got these little C-shaped thingies here, and you're going to be able to fit those in between, fit those in between these little segments, and it's going to make the heat rod more of a straight, rigid shape. And that's going to allow you to, it's going to give it more strength so you can pose it up in the air more than if you were leaving those parts out. And the last real accessory is the shield. Very, very plain on the front, very nicely detailed on the back. It does come with a mounting part here. You can mount it on either forearm. There's a bolt inside the inner frame there. Actually, no, a nut. I'm sorry. The bolt is right here, and that's going to connect in right there. And you're just going to use the little hex wrench to screw that bolt in. And then the shield will simply hang on the mount right there. Unfortunately, there's no way to store the shield on the side of the arm. You can only store it on the back. I guess you could turn his arm like so if you really wanted to, but that's about the size of it. Okay, now for the part that you've probably all been waiting for, which is the lights. Now, we've got two different batteries, as I mentioned. There's a separate battery in the forearm, obviously because it's removable. And then there's another battery pack inside the torso, which you can access by removing the head. And that's going to control all the other lights inside the body. I just realized that cable is crooked. Anyway, we've got two LEDs for the thrusters on the bottom of the feet. We've got an LED inside each lower leg that uses light piping to light up these vents on the sides right here. We've got two LEDs for the thrusters in the backpack. We've got an additional LED inside the cockpit. And then finally we have an LED inside the head. The forearm has a single LED, uses light piping to light up all 5 fingers. Now you turn these on simply by removing the backpack. There are 2 switches in here. One switch controls the mono eye, the other switch controls all the other lights. I may go and take this part off because that's kind of a pain. So, switch on that, and then switch on the mono eye. So, there you have it. You can see the little rhomba roll in there a little bit more clearly because of the light. It does a really nice job of illuminating the windows on the cockpit hatch. The mono eye, very, very bright red. It's actually kind of hard to look at. It's kind of like looking at the sun. It does still rotate. Got the vents on the bottom of the feet and the sides of the legs lit up nicely. And if I can replace these backpack parts real quick. Okay, so yeah, thrusters on the backpack, really cool. I think those might be the coolest looking lights on the kit, in my opinion. Now for the forearm, see this little black button right there? What you're going to do is you're going to take the end of the heat saber or small screwdriver, whichever one you prefer. You're going to rotate that. About 180, and that's going to turn those lights on. And yes, they blink. So not only do they light up, but they also blink. Go ahead and turn these lights off for a little bit of added effect. So yeah, light up HY2M Gouf. The Dom kit has more lights, obviously because it has more thrusters, but still, this is pretty impressive to look at once it's all put together and lit up. Very, very nice. And for any of you curious about what the inner frame looks like, this is it. Like I said, not a lot of mechanical detail. Basically, the only detail is on the knee joints and the elbow joints and just a little bit on the waist section here. Everything else is very bland and plain and just there simply to hold the model kit together and support all these LEDs. And you can see all the wires running throughout the kit. Got wires down on the feet, running up through the knee joints and the legs, through the hips, into the torso. This is where all the complex wiring is, right up under the battery case. Got a lot of metal contacts in there that you need to hook up. And got a bunch of loose wires and stuff hanging off the inner frame, but all this can just be bundled inside the backpack when it's closed. Got the switches there. And you access the batteries actually by removing the Gouf's head. Pegs off pretty easily. Got your two batteries in there. And you can do this with the armor still attached. You don't have to take all of the armor off to remove the Gouf's head. You can do that very easily with the armor still on. So that about does it for my review of the HY2M Hyper Hybrid Model Glorious Series Gouf. It's a very long title. I personally love this model kit. I'm a huge fan of the Gouf. This kit, in fact, has been one of my holy grail kits for years. I'm super excited that I was finally able to pick one up. But this kit is certainly not for everyone. If you're just a casual modeler who just kind of sort of likes the Gouf, don't try to buy one of these, because the cons of this kit is that it's really hard to find. Actually, it's not even that hard to find. You can probably find 3 or 4 of them on eBay or Amazon at any given time. But because Bandai has discontinued this kit, meaning they don't produce them anymore, it is very, very expensive when you do find it. It's not a limited edition, but Bandai just doesn't make this kit anymore. So if you do find one, odds are people are going to be asking a ridiculous, stupid price for it. The retail price, like I said, was 12,000 yen, so that's about $120. I was able to snag this one for 200. Most of them that you see on eBay are going to be like 300, 400, 500. I've even seen them go as high as 600. I mean, nobody's buying them at that price. They're just sitting there on eBay for a ridiculous price that no one's ever going to pay. So please, please don't pay anywhere near that amount of money. It's like the same advice I give for anyone regarding like limited edition kits. Pay however much you're willing to pay for it. Don't let someone else tell you how much it's worth. If you're not comfortable paying $200 for it, don't pay $200 for it. If you're not comfortable paying straight retail $120 for it, don't pay that. So, like, if you're into perfect grades and you're into like lots of fancy gimmicks and mechanical details and complex inner frames, this probably isn't the kit for you. It's you know, about the same articulation as a high grade. Even by today's standards, most high grades are more posable than this guy. But the draw of this kit is that it's the only 1/60th scale Gouf that Bandai has made, I believe. I don't think they made one back in the 80s, but I think this is the only 1/60th scale Gouf that Bandai has made. And it lights up. It's got lights all over it, so that's another cool feature. And this is my favorite era of the Gouf. You know, Gunpla, Gundam just sort of goes through different design eras. Like back in the 70s and 80s, everything was more rounded and kind of cartoonish looking. In the late 90s, early 2000s, everything had really hard, sharp edges and was very realistic and gritty looking. And nowadays, everything's sort of getting more, they're kind of blending the retro look and the realistic look, and they're going for like lots of detail and posability and stuff. But this is one of my favorite versions of the Gouf, so that's why I really wanted to track this down. Plus, I like big 1/60th scale kits. That was another reason I wanted to get this. So lots of incentive, enough incentive for me personally to want to go out and buy it, but just weigh your options and decide for yourself whether or not this kit is right for you. Like I said, when I was talking about the inner frame, you are going to need a little bit of electronic experience. A soldering iron is not necessary. It might help a little bit. I ended up doing some soldering on the electronics, but it wasn't necessary. It was just sort of kind of as a precaution. But there's a lot of wires, and there's, like I said, 9 LEDs, and there's a lot of connections and contacts, and all the instructions are in Japanese, so you don't have any English to help you. All you got to go by is the pictures. So if you don't feel very confident in doing that, I would suggest maybe not getting this kit or practicing with some electronics, like wiring up LEDs and stuff, before you decide to buy this Gouf. So, I don't think there's anything else that really needs to be gone over. Definitely a really cool kit, and definitely one of the more unique model kits that Bandai has made, since the HY2M model kit series didn't last very long, basically a short run in the early 2000s. And definitely a nice piece of my collection now. So, that about does it for this review, and with that, I'll see you guys next time.